I find I'm so excited I can barely sit still or hold a thought in my head. I think it's the excitement only a free man can feel. A free man at the start of a long journey whose conclusion is uncertain.
10:47.
So meaningless so far. Okay, come on. All right, let's see. If we stop lead you on the single circuits and lead you right to nowhere.
Pepper. 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 Waiter, there is too much pepper on my paprika.
Holy sh!
6 p.m. Starting July 1, 8:30 p.m. at midnight departures for Woods Road.
How dare he make a kissy face at us?
Yeah, that was at you, I believe.
Oh, thank you. Hi. I'm Mark.
I'm Tom.
And we're the
with
Cinemaniacs. We're back.
Normally we should say it has been 2 weeks. So we
Yes.
should say hi. Hope you had a good 2 weeks. But because it was 2 weeks, we have 15 movies about
Yes.
which to talk. So would you like to begin?
Oh, I would love to
Please
begin.
do then. Hurry up.
Okay, so first up is a film from the producers of the Underworld saga about Frankenstein monster in the modern day who's found himself embroiled in a war between gargoyles and demons in I, Frankenstein.
Well, as you said before we started the show, fortunately this movie is out, so we don't have to watch that trailer constantly again.
This is one I was looking forward to seeing because the trailer was this, and it was dumb,
Yeah.
and I was seeing it in front of everything for months.
Yes.
This was a really stupid movie.
I gotta agree,
Okay, let me
yeah.
preface what I'm about to say by, I'm the guy in the theater who was on my phone before the movie started. I was reading an unproduced John Sayles screenplay for a 1970s Loch Ness Monster movie, okay? This was dumb. This is dumb. All this is they took like a script from Underworld that didn't quite pass muster. They took out their gum eraser and they erased werewolves and vampires and wrote in gargoyles and demons.
Right.
There's a scene where somehow Frankenstein basically the opening of the film is a very condensed version of the novel of Frankenstein. And then from the end of that, he stumbles upon this war between demons and gargoyles, and he gets wrapped up in it. And there's this point where the Gargoyle Queen says to him, there's a war that's been going on since time immemorial between demons and gargoyles, and we're fighting on the side of light to keep the darkness away, and humanity has no idea. And I'm like, these are the exact same words they use in the Underworld movies. It's the exact same thing. Even Bill Nighy's in this, playing almost the same character he plays in the Underworld movies. This was so stupid and lame. And it's not Frankenstein's monster, it's sexy Kung Fu Frankenstein.
Kung Fu, right,
And Aaron
exactly.
Ecker just broods through the whole thing, and there's almost no real reason. I mean, the plot has a reason why it's Frankenstein's monster, but otherwise, this could have been anybody. This
Right.
could have been, Casca, if you read those old Barry Sadler novels, or it could have been anybody as this focal character here. So it's basically Underworld combined with The Matrix. It's big, and special effects were decent. I will say that all of the Kung Fu fisticuffs were well shot, unlike 99% of
You could see
movies.
'em.
You could see what was happening. And roll your eyes that the Frankenstein monster is a Kung Fu master. And it was just dumb. And, there were times where I wanted to laugh during the movie, but I didn't want to ruin the enjoyment of the audience because they both seemed to be enjoying it too.
Both of them did. Huh?
So I would say, having said all that, this is probably fine for like teenage boys or young kids because there's nothing offensive in it at all. There's no
Right.
language, there's no gore, there's no nudity.
Right.
It's just kind of sci-fi action mayhem. I wouldn't call it anywhere near a horror movie because
No.
it isn't. It's really just an action movie.
Right.
So, yeah. If Mad Magazine did a parody of this, I was thinking it would be called Oi Frankenstein, and that's kind of my summation.
I'll give Joe, our buddy and manager at Keene Cinemas, credit for when I went in to pick up on my radio show. I give out free movie passes and things like that every Friday, and so they are kind enough to supply me with those as well as Keene Cinemas, or at video headquarters. But so when I was talking to Joe Thursday night before this opened, I said, yeah, so you're getting I, Frankenstein, huh? And he looked at me straight in the face and he just said, aye, Frankenstein. So Joe, that one goes for you. I'll have to agree. I like Aaron Eckhart so much, and I hope eventually he'll get another film that can showcase his acting talents. I think he's strong enough to carry a film, but he just, as you said, broody and just walked through this. Why it's Frankenstein makes no sense. My understanding is that this is based off a graphic novel.
Yes.
So the Underworld creators picked that up and, as you say, just kind of did a search and replace and put gargoyles and demons in this thing. Performances overall are okay. Bill Nighy, who is a fine actor, just chews the scenery, and the effects are okay. But this really was just kind of a boring little ride that I'm glad it's over with. I'll have to say that.
Me too. And I will say I choose 3D when I have the option because for me, if I'm not enjoying a movie, maybe the 3D is good and I'll at least have something to hold on to. And this is a rare occasion these days where I felt like the 3D, I could tell that it was in 3D. Half the time you forget and you don't notice it. I noticed it in this, so I will give it points for that. If you want to enhance your sexy Kung Fu Frankenstein experience, make it a 3D sexy Kung Fu
I wasn't
Frankenstein.
intentionally paying attention to that. I don't think I'm quite as down on this one as you are necessarily, but I realized 2 or 3 times during the film that I wasn't getting any 3D. So maybe I just was less sensitive to it. Speaking of sensitive Chris Pine has decided to beam down from the Enterprise and take over the early role. We're going to find out how one of Tom Clancy's biggest and most successful agents learns how to do his agency kind of work because Jack Ryan is a shadow recruit.
It's full of stars.
That's kind of what you were thinking after the film, right? Oh my God.
Yeah, I didn't hate it. I've never been a major fan of the Jack Ryan films.
Okay.
I mean, starting with Hunt for Red October, then you had the Patriot Games, Clear and Present Danger, and you had Sum of All Fears with Ben Affleck.
Ben Affleck, yep.
I thought they were all fine, kind of smarter than your average action movie, which was neat. Political thrillers, kind of. So I was open to this. I mean, you're certainly not going to get Harrison Ford to do any more of these things. You probably don't want to. So I'm fine with doing the reboot thing and seeing how it all began. And it turns out I don't really care how it all began. It wasn't that interesting. It was very cliched. There's this moment where he's tapping on a keyboard and says, "I'm in." And he's racing against time as people are going to bust into the office he's in and discover him. He's racing to transfer something over to a flash drive and get out of the room. And then they burst open into the room with guns drawn and he's gone. Miraculous.
Imagine that.
So it's kind of one of those movies. Keira Knightley serves no real purpose other than to be the damsel in distress in this. Kenneth Branagh is the bad guy with a questionable Russian accent, and he directed this, which kind of shocked me. I think it's a serviceable matinee action movie. I'm okay with Chris Pine as Jack Ryan. I welcome more of these that are hopefully better than this. But for me, it was kind of, the action was typical, shaky, incomprehensible, so that didn't thrill me. So you're kind of left with the political and the spy kind of stuff, which wasn't bad, but it was very, very routine. Like kind of almost TV movie level plotting. So, That's
my big difference between this film and the rest of the Jack Ryans. I think you have to hold them back, hold this one up to all the other Jack Ryans. Who's the best Jack Ryan? I don't think there's that argument out there. I like Pine. I'm getting a little tired of his troubled look. Even as Captain Kirk, he gives you the troubled look. And here, understandably, he's put in distress and everything like that. You talk about Keira Knightley as the damsel in distress. She plays Kathy, his wife, and she's very good. She's a wonderful actress. I don't believe, you find out that she becomes pretty integral to the plot, and I just don't believe that this would happen. Kenneth Branagh, who is a wonderful actor, traditional Shakespearean actor, and has done some wonderful stuff. It's sad to me that this is being marketed as from the director of Thor: The Dark World, where he's done so much better stuff.
His first movie, right?
First thing he directed, exactly. Yeah. Oh no, not at all. But it makes it look like that. Branagh is okay. I think I'm giving too much credit to the actors, whom I like, for this. My real complaint about this is, because you have to hold them up to the other Jack Ryans, the other ones are really smart. Very, very clever. And to my knowledge, although Clancy, I don't think Clancy writes any of his stuff anymore if he's still alive.
He's not writing anything anymore.
But is he dead? Yeah. Okay. But, he was collaborating so often for a lot of these things on op centers and things like that. I think the really clever ones were the ones that he wrote. And I think we're out of those. And now we're getting pretty mundane. And Jack Ryan, Shadow Recruit, was a decent enough action flick, but it doesn't have the smarts that a lot of the other ones do.
I agree.
Speaking of not having smarts, sorry to give it away. A newlywed couple goes down and has a wild time in Jamaica or someplace like that. It's got lots of witchy things going on. And wouldn't you know it, they wake up one morning and they don't remember what the heck happened the night before. That's because they have really good drinks down there. But things start going weirder and weirder for this newlywed couple as they're having a kid, and you kind of have to wonder who Daddy might be in Devil's Due. Ooh, she's a bad person. This was really, I mean, once again, I don't know why I keep harping on this, but performances were okay. It's just, this took, structurally, 20, 30 minutes to get underway. We start right before there's this fake scare, right before their wedding night. It's on their wedding. It's on the night before their wedding. So then you see all like 10 minutes of their wedding, and you see 20 minutes of them going to the beach and everything. It's so unbelievably slow.
Was it masterfully shot?
Oh, wonder, wasn't it?
Okay.
Unbelievably so.
Yeah.
And again, there's such a conceit about trying to make sure that if there's a logical reason. There were a couple of times where they jump ahead. This guy, the husband, puts on a lapel clip camera. Okay, but at least, it gets his hands away from things. So you and I are always, looking at those. And I have to think most of the audience is somewhere in the back of their minds trying to think, why in the world are they still holding this camera when they're being chased by this demon or whatever the case may be. But the only thing, this was about an hour and a half into it, you saw the scene where some people are coming upon the mother and she's eating this deer and she looks alright. So she chases them, or at least the devil chases them. And we find one guy, he almost gets to the car, and it's POV from the camera that he's holding. Like this, of course. Don't we always run when things are chasing us?
And do you turn over your shoulder and point the camera at the things that are chasing you when you're running for your life?
You could do that. You should be fun upside down, but they never do that. You're always going right to the car, and then right before he gets to the car, vroom, he's hauled up. Sorry to ruin it, but it's intentional because don't go see this movie. But you get hauled up like 200 feet into the air and then slam back down on top of the car. That was pretty cool. Other than that, this was extremely predictable and mundane, and the Devils do, Devils don't. Gotta say.
Do you want to know what I thought of it?
Yes.
I didn't see it.
You were lucky.
I don't watch found footage movies. So up next, you've got Kevin Hart is a wannabe cop who partners up with Ice-T, his brother-in-law, who doesn't like him so much, who is a super cop, and they engage in a ride-along.
So I like Ice Cube. I think he's really funny. I'm looking forward to 22 Jump Street. I don't know Kevin Hart really well, but for about 3/4 of this film, you have this bit where, it's obviously Kevin Hart trying to prove himself to Ice Cube so he can marry Ice Cube's sister. And it's just this constant, Kevin Hart is unable to do something, but then it looks like he can, but then he gets scared. And then he gets scared again. It gets old. It kept cycling and cycling and cycling, the same joke until ultimately, as we know, he's going to prove himself, and Ice Cube will be happy all about it. Where this film works, and I think occasionally it does work, is the repertoire, the play back and forth between Kevin Hart and Ice Cube, but there's not enough of it. Cube is his same old self, so I think it's WYSIWYG. If what you see is what you get. If you like what you're seeing, I think you're going to enjoy it. Walter and I went to see it. We had a good enough time, but it's certainly not one I'm going to run out and rent again.
My problem is that I didn't find it funny.
No, that's a bad thing
for a comedy. You can do the 5 millionth buddy cop film, which is the exact same movie and the exact same formula, which is what this is. If the people in it are good, it's like the two people having to drive across country in a car movie.
Right.
You can still make good ones, but you can still also make bad ones. And to me, this just wasn't funny. I didn't laugh at anything. It's just like the writing wasn't there. And then sometimes things would happen.
The chemistry wasn't there.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Sometimes things would happen, and I'd be like, wow, if you just put the camera over here, that would have sold that joke a bit more. Would have had more punch. Having said that, there was a good-sized crowd at the 2 o'clock show that I went to on the weekend, and they were all really into it.
Okay.
A lot of teenage boys, younger teens were into this, so I just think it wasn't a movie for me. So I wouldn't recommend it, but
I can agree.
People might like it. Up next, speaking of movies I wouldn't recommend, oops. An all-star voice cast tells the tale of squirrels and city park creatures in their desire and effort to steal a whole lot of nuts in The Nut Job.
Pretty run-of-the-mill. Animation was perfectly good. And again, one of the criteria I think we always talk about for kids' films, not just animated films, kids' films, is there anything there? Do they have any references to stuff that adults will enjoy? And I thought an attempt was made. This was just pretty low on my list of some of the animated films from last year.
Yeah, this wasn't... I can like kids' movies on occasion, and this is really a kids' movie, not a family film.
Right.
This is really for little kids, and there were some really young kids at the theater who seemed to be enjoying it. There just wasn't anything for me mentally to connect with. It wasn't it wasn't sharp enough, and it doesn't have to be pop culture references. It just wasn't funny enough for me to be amused by it. And the story was just so basic that I was like, okay, well, just get the nuts and let me get out of here. So I would say great for little kids. Parents might be a little bored with it.
Yep.
Speaking of not great for little kids.
Well, but first of all, let's thank
yes.
all of our friends over at Keene Cinemas, Joe and Suzanne and Tyler and all those folks. But we will transition on to thanking Ken and Brantley and Betty and everybody over at Video Headquarters. But we'll start our next, what do we have, like 10?
Yes.
10 films that you can watch either that are already out or you can watch them tomorrow. We're going to start off with a wonderful, touching story about families getting back together again as Grandpa takes his young grandson on a tour across the country to try to find family connectedness. But it's not a great family put together because he's a bad grandpa.
So basically you have Johnny Knoxville in heavy age makeup with a little actor who was in Fun Size. And it's like a mix of Jackass or, for my mind, Candid Camera and a narrative story. So there's this storyline that they move through, and along the way there are all these little gags that they're pulling on the public.
Right. That's an excellent description of it. My real problem with it, and I thought Knoxville, I think, is a decent actor. I was dumbfounded. They have a bit at the end where they have a lot of outtakes and stuff, and they show him going through makeup. The makeup is spectacular. And the little kid is okay. My problem is exactly as you say, there's this narrative that after we leave these little places, they're setting these things up, camera is rolling, and we're with these two actors playing these characters, and they just keep acting for us. And we're so clearly in on the story that it's a joke. That really took me out of it. And I really ended up being so distracted by this that I didn't like Bad Grandpa.
I found it more interesting than I thought I would because I don't like the gross out humor, and there's a lot of that in this. If you're easily offended, wrong film. I was more fascinated by how they pulled it off, and unfortunately the copy of the disc that we got didn't really get into that. I've since done research and found out, who's in on this and how do they set these gags up and all that. I mean, there's some decent slapstick here and there, and I thought the little kid was actually really good in staying in character and like improvising with strangers. That was pretty cool. But otherwise, it wasn't my style of comedy either, so I probably wouldn't recommend Bad Grandpa.
I think if you're a big fan of the Jackass and and I guess this sounds insulting, but it's not meant necessarily to be, the gross out humor, then you're going to get exactly what you want. Some of the jokes are funny. One of the things that's so great about the old Canon cameras, and I'm going to date myself by having watched Alan Funt.
I dated myself all through high school.
Well, that's probably why you're here. But that it's the unique, the fun situations that they put them in. I didn't think most of these are all that fun. They're almost mean-spirited.
They're mean-spirited and sort of causing the person that was not in on the joke to, like, one woman's like nearly having a heart attack because she's so upset about things. And to me, that's kind of cruel. Right. And Candid Camera was never too cruel. It was more fun. It was more just, how does somebody deal with this? And this is like, does this person punch him or not? Right. It's just kind of not cool. Speaking of punching people.
Or cruel, if you have to watch it.
Up next, a sequel to one of my favorite animated films of recent years, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2. Boy, I really didn't like this.
Well, this was on my top 10 worst, or again, at least most disappointing films of last year.
And I loved the original film.
Sure did.
I went for the heck of it, and I just fell in love with that first movie.
Yeah.
And this has none of the joy or charm of that first film. It's all about saying, oh, look, it's a Fibber Snabbit, and then you look at it for like a fraction of a second, and they move on to the next thing. It's all about how clever can we get. The deal is that they're going back to the island to try to stop it.
All hell is broken loose.
Where there are these meldings of food and animals, like the shrimpanzee or whatever. Right. And it really feels like they got this big long list of these things, and how do we craft a story around this list of names? And it wasn't funny. A lot of the voice cast is different this time around, similar but different. And I just really thought it was boring, and I disconnected not very far into this movie. I would say this is best for little kids, but it doesn't have any of the sharpness the first film had.
It doesn't begin to have, and you can have films, you can have animated films that have a storyline and a plot that goes through. This really does feel like segment, and they've thrown it all together, trying to recapture, probably more recapture the box office, in all honesty. But the animation is good enough. But I was just really disenchanted with this, as much as I loved the first one. So, pretty disappointed.
Yes.
But maybe on the other hand, maybe we won't have to be such sticks in the mud, or I won't be a stick in the mud necessarily on this one. Ron Howard brings us the based on a true story, so you can ask yourself how much that means. But two rivals in Formula One, that's easy for me to say, stock car racing, and a pretty slam-bang action pick called Rush.
Boy, did I like this movie a lot.
Yes, this was a good film.
This was high octane, if I may say. Very exciting race sequences. Very cool vibe of the 70s. You get it in the trailer. It's these two rival race car drivers, the German Niki Lauda and the English playboy James Hunt, and their rivalry mostly on the track, and how the yearning to win at all costs affects their private lives. But I don't have a lot to say about it. Great performances, great music, great look to it. Very, very exciting. It's one that I may own one day because it's really good.
Okay. Different kind of racing, but I grew up in Indianapolis, was never interested in the 500. I was always bored by it. And so I went into this going, racing.
Cars driving in a circle. Yeah.
Right. And although, this is a different kind of racing in many respects, but I had forgotten that Ron Howard directed this, and he's a good filmmaker. And he makes films that aren't, this is certainly about stock car racing. If you're interested in Formula One, I think you're going to love it. You see a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff.
And I'm not, and it didn't affect it at all.
Well, right. I'm not at all either, and I thought it was interesting. I thought the photography was amazing, but it's about these characters. And there's certainly enough, I think, for everybody, not for the kids. I don't think there's certainly adult situations and themes and all that kind of stuff going on. But this was a really interesting film. This came out early last year, mid to last year, and really kind of got overlooked. And I think now that this is out on video, it's a great opportunity to take another look at it on video.
Absolutely. Up next, one of what was on your list in the last episode.
It was on my list.
A group of friends from the 50s reunite in the modern day for a bachelor party for one of their aged members in Las Vegas, titled Last Vegas.
I thought this had, I like everybody in it so much. You don't see Mary Steenburgen a whole lot in there. She is a chanteuse and has a wonderful voice. I was so disappointed in this. This was on, I think this is in my top 5 of most disappointing films of last year, because you've got so much talent and so many opportunities to either make wink-wink jokes about all of these great actors or not, and just kind of play it straight, a bunch of old guys going to Vegas, and I was just phenomenally disappointed in this being unfunny.
Whereas I thought it was a wonderful time.
Well, good for you.
We so rarely vehemently disagree. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. Part of it is that I love Vegas, so it's a way to get there.
I do
but
too.
I liked the characters. I thought... Easy reader. I'm blanking on Morgan Freeman. Was outstanding in this. He owns the movie. He's pretty slick and badass. And I just thought it was a really fun, light. This is the kind of movie you want to, for me, you want to rent on a Friday night with your significant other or whatever. It's just light and fun and funny. I laughed a lot during it, and I can't say that for too many comedies these days, unfortunately. So we split on that one.
That's fair enough.
Speaking of laugh riots.
Oh yes, isn't it a laugh riot? When Tom Hanks is going to take us on a wonderful little journey where he has to defend gunless and completely weaponless against a bunch of pirates in an Academy Award winner, nominated at least by one, I believe, Captain Phillips. So this was out a few months ago.
Yes.
And when this was first coming out, as much as I love Hanks, I'm thinking, oh boy, a guy gets captured on a ship, and it's based on a true story. This is going to be really exciting. And it starts, and we meet him in his house, and it's this boring old day, and we follow him to the airport, and I'm going, really? For the first 20 minutes, as soon as he gets on board that ship and those pirates come, it's a gripping, intense, unbelievably taut thriller that I just loved. Just really thought was terrific.
I rarely rewatch things on video that we've seen in the theater already.
So little time,
but I did watch this with Cricket because she hadn't seen it, and this is every bit as gripping and edge of your seat, even when you know what's going to happen. It's so well made. And I was nervous going in because it's Paul Greengrass, and he's known for shaky camera, which I can't stand. But it actually works in this for me, and it's not bad at all if you don't like that sort of thing. I can't praise this movie enough. It puts you in the moment with these people. You forget that it's a true story and that you may or may not know how it turns out. And right up to the moment where the final thing happens, you're like, you don't know which way it's going to go.
Yeah.
And it emotionally ravages you.
Yeah,
if you're
Captain
into that
Phillips
sort of
was
thing.
terrific.
So up next,
on both of our top 5, I think. Was
absolutely.
it not somewhere in there? But certainly top 10 of,
it's a
of last year.
must-see, really.
Yeah.
Speaking of emotionally ravaged, Cate Blanchett stars in Woody Allen's latest film about a woman who is emotionally unspooling in her much lower-class sister's neighborhood in Blue Jasmine. I really didn't like this movie.
Nor did I.
I generally am okay with Woody Allen films. I like them overall. They're not all great. He puts out one a year, so if you don't like this one,
Yeah.
just wait 12 months. But you're stuck with this lead character who's just whiny and hoity-toity, and who wants to identify with this person who's so upset because her Louis Vuitton bag or whatever? You just hate her. So it never really, to me, overcomes that. It doesn't come back around for sympathy. This person is the same person at the end of the movie as she is at the beginning, not to give anything away. So for me, it was just, an hour and a half spent with mostly unpleasant people who aren't happy, and I just...
Right. Well, it's people whining about life, and that's Woody Allen. That's always what Woody's done, and he isn't in his own films much anymore, so he has people substituting for him.
And it wasn't funny.
Right. It's a hallmark of Woody Allen's films to have every major star under the sun. I think anymore that's really distracting for me, because, there's Alec Baldwin, there's Cate Blanchett, and she's a wonderful actress, but you're right. They're unpleasant people. It's an unpleasant situation. I'm getting pretty tired of Woody, although he hasn't asked me my opinion. And so I was really pretty disappointed. I guess I can't even say I was disappointed because I don't expect much from these, and this was yet another just kind of whiny film from Woody Allen.
But how do you feel, speaking of Woody Allen, about The Prince of Darkness?
The Prince of Darkness,
Yes.
what I'd really like to see some master of early horror, older horror to bring along. But what's really been missing, I think, from that Nosferatu kind of guy is an extra added dimension, perhaps.
Yes.
And so if I really had an opportunity, I'd like to see Dario Argento take, I'm looking for spaghetti or something like that. But I'd like to see Argento take a stab at Dracula 3D. It's always great to have people run and yell at you. This one started out, ultimately what I'll say is if this had been shown to me 40 years ago in the 70s, what a spectacular 70s horror film this would be. Right up Argento's line. It started following the Dracula mythos pretty well, and then it just went kind of berserk. Jonathan Harker getting bit and all this kind of stuff. Just didn't follow the storyline, and it really kind of lost me. Performances over the top. Ultimately, and I think I know that you like this because of this, it just felt 4 decades too early for me. Lots of flesh to look at, and nubile maidens and things like that. But it messed with the mythos a little bit too much for me, and Argento's 3D just didn't do it for me.
You see, I kind of loved this, actually.
Okay.
I had very low expectations. I'd seen an initial trailer online which made this look bad. If anybody knows Argento films, it looked like on the level of his Phantom of the Opera, which is not a good thing. But I like the fact this felt like a Hammer movie. Not on the same level of quality as a Hammer movie, but it was set in the past, and it was, oh my God, how about a horror movie with tripod usage and well-lit night scenes and CG that the CG wasn't great, but it was used to enhance moments and not be the moment in and of itself.
Right.
So I liked the music. It was old-style music. I like the end theme. Claudio Simonetti, who did a lot of the music for Argento's old films with his band Goblin, which T-shirt I'm wearing, did the music, and that was really cool. So I had a great it's gory, it's got gratuitous nudity within the first 5 minutes, as your young son found out.
Yes, surprise.
So I actually really liked this, and it made me smile because it felt like it was a film that was made 40 years ago.
And you get to see Rutger Hauer plus like about 40 pounds from when I remember him.
So, I mean, it wasn't perfect. There were some moments that I thought were unfortunate choices, but overall I had a really good time with it.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I love horror movies, and I see so few that are new that I enjoy.
Right.
Speaking of films that I enjoyed, not to give anything away, what do you do when you are in prison for a long time and you find out that your cellmate has just gotten out of prison and is on the way to potentially kill your wife and daughter? Well, you bust your way out of that pokey, and you decide he is going to be the prey. Oh,
Fortunately, this guy's good enough that he can get up and then he can run for like another 5 minutes.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot of running in this movie. You gave this to me because you have connections.
I have connections.
And we have the responsibility and the duty to review these things. What a surprise. This came out of France, I guess, and it is dubbed, the version I got, you could either watch it with subtitles or watch dub. The dubbing was really good, was not distracting at all. This was a pretty taut, well-acted thriller about this guy who stole a bunch of money, and while he's in the joint, all of these people are trying to kill him and find out where the money was, and he has to get out because his cellmate was accused of molesting a bunch of children, and so it's so many layered. He has to get out and keep his cellmate from stealing the money, and from killing his wife, and from taking his girl and his little girl. And this was a big surprise, and I really ended up enjoying The Prey.
This is one of those movies that's frustrating for me that doesn't get a U.S. theatrical release. This is absolutely a commercial action movie. And I'm watching
Looked great.
It looked great. It moves. It's badass. There's some really good, well-choreographed fisticuffs and action sequences. It's edge of your seat the whole time. And nobody's going to know about it because it's a French movie with no actor you've heard of and a smaller release. But people really should. If you're a fan of action movies, you really should go see this movie. Or you should rent this or buy it because it's so good. And I'm watching this. I'm like, this is so commercial. This feels like an American action movie. Afterwards, I did a little research, and apparently DreamWorks has purchased the rights to remake this, so you'll be seeing this in a different form with American actors in a year or two.
What I'm worried about is in different form may mean watered down, less gritty because of the crimes that these people commit. And I can't say that enough that I heartily recommend you try to go out and find this. I don't know if our friends at Video Headquarters are going to have a copy of this, but I really like it.
It's available online from E1 or released by E1 Entertainment. You can buy it anywhere, and your local video store may have it as well. So we're down to 1 minute. So we want to briefly talk about Machete Kills.
Because we both loved it.
Which we really liked. If you like the first Machete, this is more goofy, ridiculous action movie spoofery. Incredibly gratuitous in every way possible. It's like a modern day drive-in movie, which I love. So I really liked Machete Kills. And if you like the first one, you should like this.
Modern day drive-in movie, you're fun. You're right. They talk about it. They play on a lot of those conventions. I was a little disappointed. Here's a stupid comment because it was so fun and goofy at the beginning, and then they get into the plot. And the middle half hour is an awful plot oriented. But Mel Gibson is great fun. Antonio Banderas, everybody in it is great, and Danny Trejo reprises the role. It's Machete Kills. It's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And we actually made it through all but one of the films. Charlie Countryman.
Which Shia LaBeouf, I thought it was okay.
It was okay, odd art house kind of love story drama. We managed to squeeze it in, Charlie Countryman.
Sort of.
Yeah. So there.
Until next week, then.
I'm Mark.
And I'm Tom.
And we are
Cinemaniacs.
Cinemaniacs.